Hey everyone, it's Christy with Coral Daisy Creates, and I'm here with part 5 of the September stitch along. Tonight we're going to do 2 different stitches. We're going to do the chain stitch, and I've got examples on my model. I've got chain stitch here. I really liked the way it looked in the rainbow. And then we're going to learn couching, but I do not have couching on the model. I do have more chain stitch over here. But they're both great stitches that can kind of lend some more bulk to your designs. So I'm gonna go to a little more detailed videos of the stitches, and then we'll be back for the stitch along. Hey everyone, it's Christy from Coral Daisy Creates, and today we're going to do the chain stitch. I'm going to show you 2 different ways. One is the way most people do it, and the other will be the way I prefer to do it. So we're gonna just use, I've got 1 strand of Eleganza Pearl Cotton. I'm going to begin from the back. I'm gonna bring my thread up. Then I'm going to push it back down through the same hole in my fabric and leave just a small loop. Okay, so this is probably maybe a 1/2 inch loop. Then I determine how long I want the stitch to be, and you can really vary that and bring your needle back up with your thread through the fabric at the new spot. Okay, so I made the loop, then I bring my needle and thread back up, and then I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm just gonna keep making these loops and basically hooking them together. So the beginning of the second loop always secures the end of the first loop. Okay, so again, this will be number 3. I just make the loop, leave the excess on top of the fabric, again about a 1/2 inch, and then just pull that back on through. And just keep going like that. Just pulling through like this. If you pull your thread tighter, it's going to be a narrower width. It's not going to be as wide. You can make your stitch longer, or if you wanted, you could vary the length. You can make them shorter too. It definitely, if you do it shorter, has a different look. And sometimes I love the way the shorter stitches look, because it can look really chunky. And y'all know I love my chunky stitches. So like here's just a tiny one. I just made that approximately an 1/8 inch stitch between the 2 pieces. Hopefully you guys can see this. Again, another 1/8 inch. So they're just little baby chain stitches now. Okay. And I'll go back to the regular length. And just keep doing your loops. At the end, when you're finished, you simply will bring your needle up, and rather than going back, you simply do a small straight stitch to secure that thread. And that is the chain stitch. Now I'm going to show you the other way I like to do the chain stitch. I'm going to end my thread. Okay, so now make my little knot at the bottom. And I find that when I do chain stitches this way, I really love them. So, remember last time we started and we left the loop was to the right of our needle. This time we're gonna go ahead and start a little further in, and I'm going to make the loop on the left side. So I make the loop, and the first one is different this time because I'm going to, it's almost as if I'm ending the chain at the beginning. So I'm doing what I just did over here, but I'm doing it right at the beginning. Okay, so then I'm gonna come down, and now the work is kind of done for me, I guess. Rather than worrying about how much extra I leave, I just bring my needle up, I thread it under the previous chain, and then it just automatically loops back and pull it back through that same hole. So I'll bring the needle up, then I'm going to just again slip the needle under the chain, okay, and go back down. I think that this way is easier, but just in case you learned the other way or like the other way better, I wanted to show you both. And I'm hoping the shadows aren't too big of an issue. So I find it faster this way, and especially when I do want my thread to be extra chunky, it's good to do the chain stitch this way because I find it works well when it's chunky. So on this, doing, I guess, backwards chain stitch, I don't even know what you would call it, but doing it this way, when you end it, all you do is just pull your needle through and you're gonna make your last stitch, which is still just gonna be a loop, remember, because we did the ending at the beginning. So then you just pull your thread back down and you would end your thread like normal, which I just tuck it below a couple stitches on the back of my fabric. And I'm sure there's an official way to do it, and I do not know. And I don't think the embroidery police are going to come after any of us. So though, that is just two different ways that you can do the chain stitch. Now we're going to do the couching stitch. And I have my needle, this is a chenille needle, so it has a little bit larger head. The couching stitch uses two different fibers or threads. I've got my kind of an electric blue or I'll go with electric blue color. And then I have this needle threaded and I doubled. So I have 2 strands of Eleganza number 1004 that I threaded through the needle so that I would have the extra thickness, okay? And then in my second needle, I do not need it to be this long. I'm just gonna use one length. You can use 1 or 2 widths of thread, doesn't really matter. So I'm going to just use 1 width on this because it's already pretty chunky. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the thicker thread, and that's going to be the thread that's on the bottom. You're going to see more of this, okay? And I'm simply going to bring it up from the bottom, okay? And then I'm going to go all the way to the end of where I'm stitching, and I'm going to just bring it back down. So you can see that right there. So I just made a giant, this is like a 2-inch long straight stitch. Then to secure it to the fabric more, as you can see, I have my line that I drew in the fabric, and that line is under the thick thread, okay? So I'm going to come up, bring my needle through the fabric about where that line is, and then I'm going to go as close as I can to that same hole and pull the thread through. So it's just a little teeny tiny short stitch that you can go as close together or as far apart as you like. I always go ahead, so you'll notice I did not end this thread because I prefer to be able to pull it and have some slack in that thread as I'm stitching. That way I can determine exactly where I want it to go, because I'm slightly particular about this. So again, because I left the extra thread, it's not a big deal for me to move this. And I just go and make these little stitches across, and it's going to secure the bottom thread to our fabric. I just keep going like that, and that is the couching stitch. It's really fun to use with different types of yarn. You can use strips of fabric. If you ripped up or cut, I tend to rip because it gives it more texture. If you had thin strips of fabric, maybe 1 inch, it would be fun to use those and your couching stitch. Sometimes I will do 2 close together, or even more if I want it to have the look of being more of a solid but a longer stitch in the middle. So I could do them really close together like this, or I could make them farther apart. When you're done, you're just going to secure your thread on the back of your fabric. So first I'll secure the blue thread. I really don't have many long messes on the back of this fabric. It's kind of a bummer. You guys might think I really know what I'm doing. So I'm just gonna pull those both through and then clip them. Just trim them. So that is the couching stitch. All right, so now we're going to determine where we want to use the stitches. I'm going to do this rainbow right here and chain stitch. But I am going to start, I'm going to do it slightly backwards. I'm going to start on the bottom with purple. Some people like purple, some people don't like purple, but I'm a purple girl, so my rainbow has to have purple. So I'm just gonna do the bottom of the rainbow. It's only gonna fit probably 2 chain stitches. Yeah, it'll just do 2. And all of my threads right now, I do have doubled. So I've got the purple. This is all the Wonderful Eleganza. So the bottom, I'm just gonna secure that down. Then I'll flip my stitching over. It's always interesting to me when you look at the back of your fabric. My girlfriend Carrie is who helped me realize this because I had not caught on to it. But, well, first of all, you know that the back of my fabric is a disaster, but that's okay. If you look at the back of your fabric, you can typically see the areas that still need stitching. And a lot of times with a design like this, it can be trickier to see it if you are looking at the top, partly because everything's colored on the top, whereas on the back, you can definitely tell that right in there needs some stitching. So that's always interesting. But as I look at this, obviously, since this is the little sample for the class, I have not been stitching on this like crazy since I already did one. I have been working on the design for next month's stitch along. And if I remember later, I will show it to you. So we've got our purple. And if I were stitching along and not doing a video at the same time, I would, because I'm lazy and I readily admit it, I would have taken that purple and pulled my needle over here and stitched those in the purple. And I probably would have chosen some purple over in here because it's a lot of yellow and green and I don't love that. But it's all it's all personal preference, and whatever you like, remember that there aren't rules. I'm gonna do this one. I'll do the backwards way I showed you in the video, which, especially when I'm doing a lot of chain stitching, I will use my backwards method because it just seems faster. Sometimes you can see right there, hopefully, that the purple came back through the fabric. It just caught the tail of my the little tail in the stitching. If that happens, just pull it back through. It's not a big thing, and is something that happens, you know, depending how long I'm stitching. It happens quite regularly for me. So I'm going to try to fit 4 on this line. in and just make the loop. And go down. My fabric's not as tight as I like here. That's better. So I'm gonna come up. Go under. And then go back down. And do that again. So now I've got my blue. And really, any of the lines here can be done in chain stitch. You could do some of them that probably look like a running stitch. You can make that a back stitch or a chain stitch or couching or anything like that. You can really do whatever you like, wherever you like. So what I'm going to do, let's see here. I'm trying to decide where I want to show you couching. I think I'm gonna go ahead and just do some couching right here. So I'm going to pull my blue thread through, okay? I will leave a little slack here so that when I come up with my teal or my aqua thread, I can make sure and get it how I would like it. So I'm gonna come up and I'm just gonna use this line. Right now I am using 2 thicknesses, I guess would be the way you would say it, of thread. And I'm just gonna come. I do like that with the 2 thickness as opposed to in the sample I showed you when I was teaching you how. I do like that it's chunkier. So I'm gonna just, again, go back right on that line. Doesn't have to be perfect, no rules. The one thing that you kind of need to be aware of is you can make a giant mess on the back of your fabric, which, as you've seen, I am quite good at, and it's okay. So I'm gonna go, we're back where we were a few seconds ago, I suppose. So I'm gonna go and pull that through. Then I come again, and I'm just I'm eyeballing it about how far apart I want it. And I'm just going around the little arc of the rainbow. Allie, who helps me with social media, and I guess she's basically a virtual assistant. She is in the path of the hurricane in Florida. So they have a lot going on. She lives in Fort Myers. And so definitely praying for everybody that is in Florida or the path of the storm. I have not watched the news today, so I'm not sure exactly where, but goodness, makes tornadoes seem like relatively minor to me. So I've done the couching there, and you can do it anywhere you like. It'd be fun to do some couching there or any other spots on your project. If you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to leave them in the comments. I did pre-record tonight so that there would be better video quality. I feel like with the stitches getting more detailed, better video quality really matters. And when I was uploading the live videos to YouTube, I was really not pleased with the resolution. It just seemed a little too grainy for me.